What's up guys, it's Boss Saiyan here, coming at you with another Gundam War Deck profile, and today we are looking at a basically Duel Gundam slash good stuff mono white build. So let's jump right into it. There's no turn 1 units, starting with units. Turn 2, running 2 supersonic transporters. I love this card, it's just really good in my opinion. The quick is good, the battleship's good. High mobility is good, supply is good, it comes into play rerolled. It's a toolbox, it does so many things. You can swing with it as an extra card with high mobility if you got like Raider Gundam out. It's an immediate defender, it's quick so you can surprise your opponent, and it's battleship as well, so it's just a great card overall. Only problem is it can only go to Earth, but I think that's a small price to pay for all the other stuff it does. I mentioned good stuff, so we have 2 of the Waldfeld's logo. This card is just an absolute beast. Basically double strike. Just a very strong card. Deals, it has to go up on its own, obviously. You can only have one in play, but it has Desert. If it gets blocked, it will roll the first card. If that doesn't have Desert. And basically in the battle phase you pay 0 and you deal damage with both preemptive strike and normal damage. So on its own it deals 6 damage, but then we can make that even more powerful. Running 3 Archangels here to give us extra supply effect, and also to make the PS armor cards we have here, phase shift armor cards we have here, a little bit cheaper. But again, it's just a very strong, solid battleship, and the supply 3 is super good, and it can also go both to Earth and space. Very nice. Now to the big guns, we have 2 Buster Gundams. Again, this card is just really good. PS armor, gets a bit cheaper with Archangel out. Special shield 3, okay, that's whatever, but it has wide range weapon 3, which is really good for a 3, 4, 5 unit. Very solid unit, very, very good unit. And then the main shenanigan of the deck is running 3 Duel Gundams with 3 Assault Shroud Gundams, Duel Gundams. So really the trick here is that, first of all, our Duel Gundams are cheap. So even if we don't see Archangel, it's still a very reasonably costed Gundam. It's a 515, Special Shield 3, doesn't really do much, but it's PS armor, so again it comes down active, and if it gets supply, it's not gonna jump back in the hand, so that's really cool. Not only will it not jump back in the hand, it will also stay ready to block. And what we do is we introduce the Assault Shroud version of this unit. We're basically able to switch Duel Gundam with this card from our hands, and then the turn we play this card, it will give itself supply 1. So again, if we haven't got any one of the 2 battleships out to provide this guy supply, not a problem. It will supply itself, which means it's not going to jump back into our hands. Really cool. It will stay out to defend, and it will also stay out to attack the next turn. But the real trick here is that what we can do with the switch effect, that we get Duel Gundam out, it's a 515, that's really good, but actually the Assault Shroud version is a 526, so immediately more health, which is what we care about. The 2 shooting points, we don't really care about it too much, and the fact that it can supply itself, that's also really cool. And we can just basically have this game where we're constantly making our opponent guess whether we have an Assault Shroud in our hand to switch it out. And then once we do switch it out, we can then, don't forget, next turn, we can still drop the Duel Gundam into play. So we're just able to basically almost bring 2 units out for the price of 1, and that price will be 1. So realistically, the Archangel isn't in there for that huge amount of cost reduction. It's more in there for the supply to keep our phase shift armor guys running, but it's always good to have it in a deck like this. And of course, the switch effect we have to do, I believe it's the defense phase. So just a second. I should have checked this before, but we might as well come back and check it real quick. Yeah, it has to be done during the attack step, actually. So if we're attacking, we have to do the switch immediately. If our opponent's attacking, we have to do the switch before we send out any defenders, before our opponent finishes their attack step. But that's cool because we can do it both our turn or our opponent's turn. If we drop a Duel Gundam and you're okay to swing with this guy on its own, that's absolutely fine. You can switch to Assault Shroud Gundam to give your opponent that extra surprise, and the next turn you can still drop the Duel Gundam as long as you have something to supply with. That's really cool. And you also have this capability that if you don't want to, you can just go ahead and swing with an Assault Shroud, let it jump back into your hand, and then you can switch it back out to the Duel Gundam again. So you have this constant loop of cards that you can only do with this and the Strike Gundam version of this deck, because you need the phase shift armor. That basically allows you to be able to jump it back in your hand if you want to, if you don't send them up to attack with a supply ship. And then finally, just to be able to cover high mobility and as well, running 2 copies of Raider Gundam. This is an uncommon that really should be a common, honestly. It's a 605, which is strong on its own, but you can also transform it into high mobility 216. Give it a bit more health, and don't forget that you also have the ability to go up as a high mobility team with these 2. Just bash him for 3 high mobility. That can sometimes be enough, just if you can get this constant ping going on. Also, what's really cool about Raider Gundam is that it doesn't have phase shift armor, so you don't have to worry about supplying this unit whatsoever. On to the characters. We run 2 Abduls, mostly in for the card draw. Works really well on the Raider Gundam, works really well. You can put this guy on the Supersonic Transporter. It's not going to give it buff because obviously it doesn't have Battleship Booster, but it's still cool that if you inflict battle damage to your opponent, you get to draw a card at the end of the turn. That's very strong. We need card draw in any deck, so Abdul will give this potential opportunity. Is also really good on Buster Gundam. If Buster Gundam can like wide range weapon off some of the weenies, and then we do get to deal some damage, then that's gonna be good as well. Not a super good version, but you can put Abdul on Wolfal's logo. Just give it a little bit of a buff, mostly for, obviously, again, in this case, the strike points and the health. Make it a 4-3-4, and you're fairly guaranteed early game, definitely turn 4. If you pull this off, you will be drawing a card off Abdul here. We have 2 copies of Nicol Amalfi, and Nicol is in here because he combos super well with this strategy. Now, Nicol Amalfi has, first of all, he gives a stupendous amount of health. He gives +1/+1/+3 to the unit, 1-1-3. So he makes pretty much anything, any of our main units will be out of the range of any realistically problematic wide range weapon, just on that 8 or 9 health if we switch into Duel Gundam. And when you play this Nicol Amalfi onto a unit with phase shift armor, your opponent can play only auto effects until the end of the turn, which means until the end of that turn, when we play Nicol, our opponent cannot use wide range weapon, our opponent cannot use Psycommu. They basically shut down all of the red effects pretty much, unless except the ones that are auto. You can actually check those out in more detail at the end of the rulebook, which one is auto and which one has specifically designed effect points. So it shuts down everything besides auto, which is huge. It's really big. And we can see some really cool value of Nicol Amalfi, because once a character is piloting a unit, whatever happens to the unit is what's going to happen to the character. And this is where we come back to this, that, okay, I got Duel Gundam with Nicol Amalfi. I can switch in the Assault Shroud, giving me a 9 health unit, a 639. That's pretty big. And during that turn, our opponent still cannot snipe it down from the station area, the wide range weapon, none of the nasty evil effects. And then what we can do is, obviously, this guy is going to supply itself, but then the turn after, if we want Nicol Amalfi back in our hands, what we can do is we can swing with the Assault Shroud and not give it supply. And then both cards will jump back into our hands, and that will allow us to keep replaying Nicol Amalfi, and that will allow us to keep constantly shutting down our opponent's effects, and be able to ideally swing in with good values, basically shutting our opponent down. It doesn't, Nicol Amalfi doesn't even have to swing, just basically the turn you play him, your opponent can only play auto effects. So that could even mean that you can something that may have been stopping your Lego, you're now going to be able to go through with that. So this is a really strong sort of triangle here. This is the core of the deck, getting these 3 guys into your hands and starting to play this this jank out. Keep dropping Nicol Amalfi. Because of course the problem is with many of the pilots is once you play it, that's it. That's the end of it. It's very unlikely it's going to jump back into your hand. But remember, phase shift armor cards, if they don't get the supply effect, they jump back into your hand at the after the resolution, the return step. They jump back into your hand, and that will happen to Nicol Amalfi as well. And then our final character is obviously Troa Barton. The Troa Barton Andrew Waldfeld's Lego combo is very famous, well known. It is just a beast. It's, if you get these 2 cards in your hand, turn 4 swing, turn 5 swing, you're probably gonna finish the game turn 6. So it's really strong. But obviously, Nicol Amalfi will give you this very different kind of game style, very defensive. We can go very attacking, we can go very defensive, and we support this function with a number of strong command cards, which of course White has no shortage of. We have 2 copies of Total Base Destruction to remove an operation card from the game in the assign phase. Really good card. Every color should run some form of an operation removal if they have access to it. 3 copies of Reply. This counter might be underrated by some people and certainly isn't necessarily in the league with the red color counter cards, but it's still really good. It has any timing, which is really good. It's cheap. You can play from turn 3 onwards, and it negates a command card just straight up, puts it back onto the nation pile of your owner's nation pile. And you might be thinking, well, that's not like, it's kind of remand from Magic, if any of you play Magic, and puts it back on the deck. But again, remember that there is a chance that if our opponent tries to do something nasty to like a Lego, for example, you reply, put it back on the deck. If then Lego hits, likely that you're gonna be able to hit in with Lego. Then you might be milling that reply then into the discard pile. Even if not, you still gain yourself a turn by putting that reply back on the deck. And you also know what your opponent is going to draw. Now you know what's in their hand. Now you can perhaps work around that situation. So 3 reply, definitely a really good control card in this deck. We run 2 copies of Successful Negotiations. This is just our straight up recovery card. I haven't really been a massive fan of these recovery cards until I started to use them and see just how powerful they can be. This is only a command. It's a one-time thing. You got 2 copies. You destroy one of your generation cards to put 5 cards from your discard pile back in the nation pile. That's good. You know, you refuel your deck. You can do that twice. That's 10 cards that you can do, which, you know, it can mean the difference between winning and losing. We run 3 copies of Parts Thief. This card is just, it's so good. Like, unbelievable how many good cards White has access to. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Very cheap again, all these cards that we've looked at, all the different command cards are turn 3 onwards. Assign phase again, move 1 unit card to its owner's hand. That can be yours, that can be your opponent's. If Duel Gundam shrouded itself, but you really need that Nicol Amalfi, next turn you go ahead and return Duel Gundam Assault Shroud into your hand with Nicol Amalfi. Play down Duel Gundam, play down Nicol Amalfi again, and there you go, laughing, no problem. And of course we do need to make sure that we get the needed cards into our hands. We got 2 copies of Support from the Middle East. Only have 2 copies, so that's how many I'm running. Same for Troa. I would probably run a second Troa if I had another copy. I would cut out 2 Abduls for another Troa and another Support from the Middle East if I had those cards. But right now I have 2, and that's what it is. But I also have 2 copies of 5 Gundams Confirmed. This is a really good card for White. Pretty much all the top end cards in White are Gundams. Units with Gundam in their names. It searches for the Wing Gundams. It searches for the Gundam Seed Gundams. So it will get you pretty much any of your, you know, high cards. Like, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck. By the way, this is a free card. You don't have to pay any cost for it. Look at the 5 cards of your deck anytime during your turn. The timing is your turn. I think this is the only card that says your turn as a timing. So you look at 5 cards from your nation pile, and you can take 1 or more any cards you find on top of your deck that is a White unit that has Gundam in its name. So let's just count here. We have 3 Duel Gundams, so that's obviously 3. We got 3 Shroud, that's 6. We got 2 Raider Gundams and 2 Buster Gundams. So we got 10 cards that we can, even if we just find 1 of these, is a 1-for-1, but if you pick up 2, 3, 4 maybe, you gotta be very lucky. But if you do that, this is an absolute value engine. If you have to discard stuff, well, it doesn't really matter as long as you get the cards in your hand that you really need. You know, if you're like really struggling to get more Assault Shrouds in your hand, well, you're probably gonna find one. Or something else that's also playable. What I would say is, if you have 5 Gundams confirmed in your hand, wait till you play your unit for the turn. If you're about to play 5 Gundams confirmed. Another important thing about Support from the Middle East is, by the way, this card has seen an errata. You can only use 1 of this per turn. Okay, so that's an important one. Same errata goes to the red secret ceremony. You can only use 1 per turn. But this is our main draw engine, and of course the 2 Abduls. I'm going to put that one here as well. So White actually has a really versatile sort of draw engine, and again, White is so good. Look, it can go aggro. It has a bit of high mobility. It has a bit of make our stuff cheaper for phase shift armor. We got wide range weapon, we got special shields, not that that matters a lot, but it's still there. A couple of different draw engines. We have, you know, return to your hand or your opponent's hand. This card is just so huge, the Parts Thief. You know, you can play your assign phase, you can play your opponent's assign phase as well. Your opponent plays something and you're like, okay, well, you know what, just put it back in your hand. Sorry, bro. Yeah, you know, it's just such a good card. Offensive, defensive, super card. Okay, so that's the draw engine. It's very nice, but again, as I said, if I had more Support from the Middle East, more Troa, I would run those instead of the 2 Abduls. I have a third 5 Gundams confirmed, but because it's a turn 4 card, I think 2 is enough for the deck. That's just my playstyle. And then for the generations, this time it's a bit different because we've got 2 of the quick generations. So you can actually play um, um, these cards if you have them in your hand on top of playing your 1 generation per turn. So if you like draw into 2 of these, let's say, and you got a Heliopolis Citizen down, you can then still drop these 2 because the quick only the quick rules errata only applies to units, so you can only play 1 unit with quick per turn. And I normally tend to keep that during my opponent's turn. If I can quick during my opponent's turn, I'm putting another unit down into play. I am ideally hoping to get a higher number of units into play than my opponent. But these generations, only 3 in the deck, they can be played on top of your 1 basic generation, and they go to the discard, they go to the junkyard at the end of the turn. So there's a couple of things you can do with these, obviously. If you got like turn 1, okay, fair enough. Turn 2, you might be able to play a second one, and then you may be able to drop a quick, which might allow you to drop your logo early. You might be able to bring out an Archangel as well. Next turn you might go back to 2, but you know, if you draw into your other Gundam, your other card, you can stay on curve. I would, however, definitely encourage anybody who wants to try this deck out is that if you see 1 quick generation in your hand, wait until you get your 3rd generation into play and then put out the quick, so then you can bring out an actual 4 total generation cost Gundam from your hand. And that could be Duel Gundam ideally, or the Buster Gundam. Any one of these 2 will do. Or if you got Archangel out and you really need that extra 1, I don't recommend hard casting Assault Shroud ever, but it might be a situation where you need that +1. Then yeah, fine, go ahead. You can get the cost reduced by reduced by 1 with Archangel, and then 2 is not horrendous to play. So we got 3 quicks, and I ended up running 11 regular generations. I wasn't comfortable with having 10. That was the main thing. I don't tend to run 14 generations. For me, if you got a little bit of a draw power, 13 is usually good enough. But still, starting hand really matters in this game. So making sure we see some generations in our starting hands. So this is my Assault Shroud white, I don't know, good stuff deck. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Bastian signing out. Peace.